My name is Justice, and today I'm going to be talking about children and trauma. I've worked with children and youth for almost 10 years now. I've worked in different environments like summer camps. I've worked with groups like the Boys and Girls Club, and I've actually gone into the schools and worked with children. So when doing that, I've engaged lots of different children who have experienced different levels of trauma. And because I've been in those environments, I've taken different training sessions. So I'm going to share with you guys a little bit about dealing with children with trauma. So before we get started, I want to get to know everybody in the room. So we'll start with this gentleman on the right in the back, and just say your name in one way that you engage with children on a weekly or monthly basis.
My name is Rod Hill. I coach 8th grade basketball, so I deal with 8th grade boys on a weekly basis.
Nice to meet you, Rod.
My name is Jethro Smith, and I'm a father of 6 children, so I engage with them every day and their friends.
Nice to meet you, Jethro.
My name is Cassidy, and I'm a 5th grade teacher.
Nice to meet you, Cassidy.
Oh, my name is Destiny, and I work as physical therapy tech with children who are learning how to write and walk.
Nice to meet you, Destiny.
My name is Celine, and I work at the community center.
Nice to meet you, Celine.
My name is Teddy, and I help teach a class for children.
Nice to meet you, Teddy. All right, so to start off, I'm gonna ask you guys a question. When you see a child acting out at a grocery store or throwing a fit in public, what's the very first thing you think? Just shoot some things at me. What's the very first thing you think?
Baby's kids.
Yes.
Parents need to control their
Parents need to control their child.
Child needs some training.
Child needs some training. These are all things that people tend to think whenever the first judgment that they make when a child is acting out like that. So say there's a child who keeps continually bringing home bad grades. You know, all the tutors they're getting, the time to tell them to do their homework, whatever, nothing seems to work, and they constantly bring back bad grades. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
They're not being responsible.
Not being responsible,
Lazy.
lazy,
Something's going on in their home life.
something's going on in their home life. A lot of these things are the first judgment that people make on these children's behavior, and they judge them on their behavior. And so people need to have a change of perspective. When children experience trauma, there's lots of times, and most of the time, they are crying out for help throughout their behavior. So their behavior is their form of saying, help me, help me, help me. But a lot of people don't see that. They don't see what's on the inside that needs to be addressed. They just judge them by their actions. So today, I'm going to talk to you guys about 7 risk factors that can cause a child to experience trauma. I'm going to talk to you guys about how trauma can damage a child's brain, and learn how show you how building trust is a way to pull a child out of that shell where they're hiding from people and not engaging with them, and also like that the behaviors that you saw before, how to pull them out of that. I'm going to show you 4, at the end, I'm going to show you 4 engagement strategies you can use during your time of engaging with a child who's experienced trauma. And lastly, how to make a child feel safe. So I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to have you guys describe to me what a regular pregnancy looks like. From the moment that the mother figures out that she's conceived and she's growing a baby in her womb to the moment that she's holding the baby in her arms. Just give me some things of what happens during a regular pregnancy.
First, the mom is, I would say, a regular or normal pregnancy, the mom is happy
Mom's happy.
about it.
She changes like her lifestyle. Like if she drinks alcohol, then she won't drink during the pregnancy.
Right. Changes lifestyle.
Scared.
2 more.
healthy pregnancies normally. Yeah.
9 months, lasting for 9 months. Yes. These are all different things that happen during a regular healthy pregnancy. The mom will begin to eat right so that she's healthy, so that her child's healthy. And usually people are happy that they're having a child. Now, a child who has experienced trauma, this brings us to our first risk factor, which is a stressful pregnancy. This can be when a mother is just, could be smoking, could be going through drugs, being abused, or just simply stressed out. this can cause a stressful pregnancy. And that not only brings stress on the mom, but also the child. The second risk factor is going to be a difficult birth. Now, sometimes mothers don't always have the means to have their child in a hospital, or they don't take the necessary precautions to have a healthy pregnancy. So this can cause a difficult birthing process. The third risk factor is going to be early hospitalization. So there are children who are born with complications or born prematurely, and they're not cooking in the womb for the full 9 months. So this is called early hospitalization, and that causes stress on the young developing child's body and brain. Abuse is the next risk factor. This can be physical, sexual, or mental. So when a child receives this kind of abuse from adult, they tend to put up a shield and a guard against all adults and not trust them. Neglect. Neglect is another risk factor. Now, this is different than being ignored. Being ignored is like, I see you, I know you're there, but I'm choosing not to acknowledge you or interact with you. Neglect is, I don't even see you at all, or you're as good as dead to me. That's the severity of neglect to a young child. And it's very traumatic for them. And a child who has experienced neglect can either show no emotion, they can be overly aggressive and angry, or and then they also tend to think to themselves, nobody wants me, and I don't need anybody. Because when they were young, there was nobody there to come to them when they were crying. There's no one there to show them that they love them. That's what neglect does. Next one is trauma. So all of these can be listed as traumatic events, but this trauma has to do with traumatic experiences like car crashes, a child who may have experienced their mother or father being abused in the house and seen that, or a loved one who died, a family member who died, going through things like that, traumatic experiences. And the last one is going to be systems effects. And these can be like natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes, anything that can negatively affect the child. So here are a few statistics that have to do with the 7 risk factors I just talked about. I'm going to read these for you. So more than 2/3 of children reported at least one traumatic event by the age of 16. So by the age of 16, more than 2/3 of children have experienced some form of trauma. The national average of child abuse and neglect victims in 2015 was 683,000, or 9.2 victims per 1,000 children. Each year, the number of youth requiring hospital treatment for physical assault-related injuries or abuse would fill over every seat in 9 stadiums. So imagine a football stadium, 9 of those. 90% of injured and 12% of physically ill youth have post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is more than half of the U.S. families have been affected by some type of disaster. And to be specific, that's 54%. 54% of U.S. families have been affected by some type of disaster. So these statistics have to do with the 7 risk factors. So if you turn to your first handout, the picture of the brain. This is a child's brain. And the purple part here in the middle is called the limbic system, or the fight, flight, or freeze. So this part out here is let's say the happy part of the brain. This is where the child experiences emotions like happy and joy. And this is the part of the brain the child uses at school when they're trying to learn and comprehend things. Now, when a child has been through trauma, this is when they become protective and defensive. And that's when they use this part of the brain. Now, a child who has experienced stressful pregnancies and difficult births and all those 7 risk factors from the very beginning lives in this part of the brain their entire life. They don't ever get to use this part of their brain. So when they're in public, acting out and screaming, when they're bringing home bad grades, it's because they're not able to use this part of their brain because they're constantly on defense mode because of the trauma they've experienced. So we're going to move to their next handout. You see the checkerboard. So you see tile A and tile B. Are tile A and tile B the same color to you guys?
Yeah.
What if I told you they were? Did you believe me?
Yeah.
What if I told you I could prove it? Are tile A and tile B the same color now? How about now?
2 different things.
There's a lot of people still struggle to believe me from showing it on the screen. So I'm gonna show you yourself. As you have the page in front of you, flip the top part down and tell me if it's still the same color, if not the same color, or if they are the same color.
They are the same color. Same color. Wow.
Yeah, it's trippy. When I first saw this, I was like, wow. Now this explains what happens to a child's brain when they experience trauma. They're not able to see a safe adult for a safe adult. They only see they see adults as a danger because of some type of event they've been through, or it may not even be with a safe adult. It could be other types of experiences that they tend to put a guard up because of they're wanting to protect themselves from the trauma they've experienced. Now, the only way to pull a child out of that shell of living in their limbic system, that little purple part on the brain, the only way to pull them out of that is to get them to trust you. And that's what this last part of my presentation is going to be about. So first, we're going to talk about 4 engagement strategies. The first one is eye contact. So when a child is fearful and living in that fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain, they're constantly afraid. But when they're afraid, they won't make eye contact. So when you make eye contact with the child that you're engaging with, it is huge. And it could be a simple thing as, are your eyes purple today? I think your eyes are purple today. Can you show me? And the moment they look up and you make eye contact, that connection right there is huge. Second one's going to be healthy touch. A lot of children who have been through abuse are turned off by any kind of touch from an adult. So it's important that we do healthy touch, like high fives, arms around the shoulders, hands on the shoulders, side hugs. These are healthy touch. This is healthy touch. It's something that won't alert them or startle them. Third thing is going to be an authoritative voice. This is not yelling and being stern and being direct. This is being kind, talking gently and lovingly, but in a way that they know that you're still in charge and that you're their friend, but you're an authority in their life. The last one, because they need structure. The last one is going to be being playful, and this is the most important of all of the engagement strategies. A child cannot be fearful if they're playing, or when they're playing, they can't be fearful. So play always trumps fear. So whenever you are engaging with the child, it needs to be in a playful way, a playful manner, so that they don't trigger or have to go back into that limbic system of the brain and begin to fight, flight, or freeze. So these are 4 ways to help a child feel safe, and they all go together. The first 3 are very similar. So be predictable, have routines, have rituals, and have appropriate transitions. So being predictable is when the child feels safe with you and trusts you, they know what you're gonna do, they know what you like, they don't have to worry like, how's this man gonna treat me? How's this woman gonna treat me? What they're gonna say to me? You're predictable. They know what's gonna happen. Having routines has to do with like a schedule. So say you're at a school. A lot of times schools will have or a therapy place. They'll have the order of the day posted on the door in a colorful way, so the child can know what's going to happen. So when a child knows what's going on, what they're going to do next, they don't have to guess about what's going on. They will feel safe. The last one is rituals, and that just has to do with doing things the same way every time. So not bringing any crazy surprises. Because a lot of kids like surprises, but kids who have been through trauma, if you bring something new, they're immediately going to get startled. What's going on? And they're going to put up that shield, and that's what we want to avoid. So these 3 things, being predictable, having routines, and having rituals, are very important in making the child feel safe. The 4th one is to have appropriate transitions, and this has to do with, like I said, being playful. A lot of children, when it's time to move from one thing to another, they won't want to move because they may feel like you're pulling them away from something they enjoy doing, or you're pulling them away from an environment that they feel safe in. So it's important that you're playful and appropriate when moving them from the transition. You don't want to startle them again. You don't want them to feel unsafe, and you want them to trust you. So it's very important that you build trust with the child when you're engaging with the child who has experienced trauma, when you're engaging with them. Because of the risk factors I talked about and the ways that children experience trauma, and as we talked about with the checkerboard and the brain, how that affects their brain and how they live in that one section of the brain, we want them to use the rest of the brain. And the only way they can do that is if they know to trust an adult and a loving adult to look on the inside and see what's going on the inside of the trauma and not just judging them by their behaviors. So this is the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions or feedback?
Yeah, could you give an example of the playful transition?
Yes. There's a story I was told. There was a some parents who brought in a child who just would always say no or throw a fit or start crying when they had to move from just simple things. So they're at this therapy place, and the child is playing Play-Doh, and the parents are sitting there like, so she's not gonna stop playing. And so she's like, 5 minutes, and we're gonna put up the let's say Kaylee. Okay, Kaylee, in 5 minutes we're gonna put up the Play-Doh. She was like, okay. So then 5 minutes came. Kaylee, it's been 5 minutes. It's time to put up the Play-Doh. No. So they tell her again. Kaylee begins to throw a fit. No, I don't want to put up, and she's not putting up the Play-Doh. So then what this lady does is, hey, Kaylee, let's take the yellow containers and let's hide them around the room. And then let's go find the containers and put the Play-Doh in them and close them up. Okay. She put them up. She went in there, put all the Play-Doh up, put it in the cabinet, and then went on to the next activity. So that was just simple. That's as simple. It's plain and simple, but they did it in a playful way. And a lot of people will say that that child needs structure. The child's not listening, but really, sometimes when children have experienced some level of trauma, you need to be playful, and they need to know that you're not there to harm them, and that you're just there to have fun with them. And that's just an example of one type of playful transition. Now, there's different kinds of transitions, but to answer your question, that's an example. Any more questions?
So with the checkerboard example, I'm still having trouble with this because they look like two different colors. Was your point was that people that kids that had trauma see the world differently? Is that what
Kids who have experienced trauma will see certain situations. They'll see. So say there's a child who was abused by their parent, their father. So then they would be shut off to all men. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't trust men. The man comes up to them, they want to hide, they want to run away. And then as they get older, this can cause them to want to be aggressive towards men or not like them, mm-hmm. Period. So when a child has experienced that level of trauma, it turns them off towards men. And the only way that you can, it's just like the checkerboard, you couldn't really see what the actual color was. But once you get with the child and begin to talk through their trauma and what's going on and realize where that's coming from, and they become old enough to process that, then they'll start to realize that was just their father who was treating them that way. And that's not how all men are. That's just an example.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more questions or feedback, thank you for listening, and you guys have a great day.